Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Round Lake Area School District Board of Education on March 18th, 2024 at 7 p.m. If I can get started first with a roll call, please.
Miss Lee?
Here.
Mr. Francisco?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mr. Jewett?
Here.
Mrs. McGinley?
Here.
Mr. De Vera?
Here.
All right, and first up is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first up, we're going to need an approval of the meeting agenda. There is one amendment to the meeting agenda. Special recognition and presentations, number B, the Exchange Club Youth of the Month will not be this meeting. It'll be the next meeting, hopefully. So that one will be removed. So if I can get an approval of the meeting agenda with the amendment of removing 3B.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ms. Lee, second by Ms. Larson. Roll call, please.
Mr. De Vera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yeah.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries. We have an approved agenda, and first up on that is special recognition and presentations. And it is our February Athletes of the Month and our athletic director, Mr. Karozak.
Hi, good evening, everybody. We'll start off with recognizing our February Female Athlete of the Month. You may recognize her. She was here last week. But in all seriousness, our Female Athlete of the Month for February is on track to be one of, if not the most decorated athlete in Round Lake High School history in any sport. Here to say a little bit more about her accomplishments in general, but in particular in the month of February, is head wrestling coach Ken Filas to recognize our female February Athlete of the Month, Ireland McCain.
Ireland had an outstanding month of February. She took second at the first ever IHSA Girls Regional here at Round Lake High School. She followed that up with another runner-up performance at the sectionals the following week. And she became, by half an hour, became the second three-time state qualifier for wrestling in Round Lake history, regardless of gender. But she is the first female athlete to do that. Overall, she had 34 wins, 32 by way of fall, which you beat your brother. So you can always rub that in. And she's got one more year, so you can further distance yourself from Aiden. But no, she's a joy to have. We're blessed to have her for another year. And honestly, I think we work a little bit harder. We get back to the drawing board. It was a little bit of a rough state tournament for the girls. But honestly, I think that she can come back and she can come and, place very high on the podium again next year.
All right. Our male athlete of the month for February is also from the wrestling program, and also had a unprecedentedly successful February. I won't go too much into the details. I'll save those for Coach Files, who is going to recognize our male February athlete of the month, William Cole.
Will, you're becoming a staple at these board meetings. Well, you and Ireland. Well, a lot of the wrestlers, but anyways, Will. Again, I can't say enough about his February. He started off by winning the regionals for the second time at the beginning of February. Then he basically destroyed everybody through the sectionals. Him and Cordova actually were the first sectional champs that we had since 2003 when Rob Wallach did it. You fared much better than Rob Wallach did downstate. Anyways, and then he continued that swath of destruction through the state tournament. After dropping a quarterfinal match, he comes back, pins a guy who would beat him last year, and then beats some other guys, and ends up in the third, fourth place match, and ends up in the fourth place. He is the first ever heavyweight, or 285 pounder, excuse me. Shouldn't call him a heavyweight. Because this guy is super athletic. But he becomes the first ever 285 pounder in school history to place at state. So honestly, we will probably go into the year ranked number 2 next year. Yeah, it's so we anticipate talking again out here at the board meeting next year, and just continuing to watch this young man grow. He's currently playing volleyball for us right now. I think you're just going to do debate or speech again next year.
Yeah.
Speech and football. So, very well-rounded kid. So, yeah.
All right, next up we have the trainee of the month and Mr. Peterson.
All right, so each month I get to introduce our trainee of the month, and it's going to be a little different this time because actually we have Vera's supervisor with us tonight, Amy Huffmaster from Takeda, and she'd like to say some words about Vera.
All right. I don't really have anything prepared, but
I totally put her on the spot, so I apologize.
it's okay. It's okay. So Vera started coming to us earlier this year. The transition program is amazing. I have a brother who's 44 right now, who Vera knows, and she plays athletics with Special Olympics. But he went through the transition program 20 years ago with CEDAL, and he strives. The train, the bus, the life skills they learn in these programs are amazing. So it's really great that the schools have locally started doing that for their kids because they need it. And Vera comes in every day and she brings enjoyment to all the Takeda employees. We have a personal bond because I'm from Grant High School and she likes our cheer. So we do that together. But she's really great. The program is great. So thank you guys for letting them come and join us during our day. And thank you, Vera, for having fun with us every day.
All right, next up, we will move to the less fun and exciting parts of the meeting, communications to the board. And first up on that is the obsolete technology equipment.
Speaking of less fun. All right, thank you. This evening, I'd like to preview the third iteration of this program's recycling phase. So consistent with previous practices, we would be providing our students an opportunity to buy out obsolete iPads this year. As we've done in the past, the technology department has reached out to our vendors, and we've secured quotes for the 7th generation iPads that will be obsolete this summer. And this year's price point is $84. The first year we did it was 80, and last year was 49. Last year was the second year of a 6th generation device. This year is the first time we have a 7th generation device ready for recycling. We will run this program like we've done in previous years, partnering with communications department to make sure parents receive the appropriate communication. It is only available for students in the fourth, 8th, and 12th grades. Those are the devices that are obsolete. One caveat exists. Our 4th graders have an 8th generation device in their hands because of the way the cascade went with the elementary programs. So they will be, in essence, turning in their 8th generation devices and having the opportunity to buy a 7th generation device, which we will provide them if they so opt in. In order to be eligible, they will have had to have paid their technology fees in full or have them waived through the business office over the course of those 4 years they were in the program. We will also work with Dr. Gibbons to make sure we have a process for the buildings to receive the money and that they are paid in full before the devices are then taken home before the end of the school year. I think I covered my bases. Any questions?
I have one. Assuming that not everyone purchases, do we have a plan for how we're going to roll out that in order to allow others to purchase the remaining inventory, or was that not built in?
So at this time, because these are 7th generation devices, we would use any remnant devices for loaners in the schools for subsequent years. Our current loaners are 6th generation devices. We would make those obsolete and potentially make those available for additional sales once we have the full counts determined. 7th generation to us would trump the 6th generation loaners that we currently use in our schools.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have a question because you mentioned 4th grade has 8th grade generation and they would be able to purchase 7th grade or 7th generation. And then it's not specifically, but making sure that communication is clear to the families that in this buyback program, they're not actually buying back the iPad that they have currently. We need to make sure that communication is clear.
We will ensure we will work with Heather's area to make sure that's clear. Hermes is heading this up in our area. We'll make sure we make it clear because that is a distinction worth noting. The 8th generation device is only 3 years old. It still has useful life to us, and we want to keep those in the district until they're obsolete next year.
Just making sure that that is, clear communication for 4th grade. And then will we get that communication out to families so that they can plan and prepare for that, purchase if they choose so.
Yes, my understanding in talking to Hermes is pending tonight's discussion. He is already, I think, working with Sarah on the communication. It should go out sometime this week. We expect the forms to open up and allow our parents to have time to go ahead and select that option. There'll be several reminders consistent with what we did last year that are sent out to them.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
So I've got a question that's somewhat selfish in nature. Zach is in transition. Where does transitions fall within that? Because I need to know, do I need to pry the iPad out of his fingers while he's sleeping, or how should I handle this?
So it's a great question. So currently the transition program is not eligible for the buyback program. It was based on 4 years of tech fees, and that happens 1st through 12th grades. So we would find an opportunity to bring those devices back in the district when they get turned in. Is that okay?
So prying it out of his fingers. Check.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hearing no additional questions, next up, we will move to supports for newcomer students and families. Dr. Apgar. Or maybe not.
So thank you to Dr. Mendoza and the Board of Education for allowing us to share information with you about supports for newcomer students and families. So with my expanded responsibilities this school year, I've been very fortunate to work with the multilingual team of Ms. Redding, Ms. Moreno, and Ms. Knapp. So tonight we will share information with you about who are newcomers, our enrollment trends, newcomer registration, the intake process, health services, and staff support. So as we embarked in this process, we worked with a representative team of secretaries from the buildings, district office staff, Eric Otero from Ms. Bennett's team, and a slew of staff who have helped us build out our supports for our newcomers. So as we consider who are newcomers, there are two definitions. So newcomers are students who are born outside the United States who have arrived in the country in the last 3 years and are still learning English. But in the district, we have an educational definition. So they're students who have moved into the United States and are in their first year of education in the United States. So some newcomers arrive voluntarily, so they come here to live with other families as they get established and then find their own housing here in the district, while others are forced to leave their country due to situations like war. So in those situations, we look at asylum seekers and refugees. So all refugees are asylum seekers, but not all asylum seekers are refugees, and we'll share more information with that in a moment. But as we look at who are the families who are coming into the district, they're coming from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Colombia, Nicaragua, Ecuador, and Ukraine. So as we look at our enrollment trends, currently our enrollment for kindergarten through 12th grade, and we presented kindergarten through 12th grade because those are the metrics that are provided on the state report card. So for that population of students, we have 6,103 students in the district. Now, if we look at our current multilingual students, we have 2,539. So there's a trend in the district where the district is becoming less general education and more multilingual. Currently, our multilingual students make up 42% of the district. And this is happening due to families moving into the district who are newcomers from outside of the country. And then also students who are transferring to us from surrounding districts are coming to us from dual language programs. There's a couple numbers here in the center of this graph I want to share. So our current newcomers is at 134 students. Now total newcomers for FY24 is 216. So as I mentioned, as students come into the district, they hold that newcomer title for a school year. So during FY24, 82 students have kind of dropped that label because they've been in the district for a year. So students receiving newcomer status after August 1st of 2024 is 136. This is important because as of this current school year, 136 newcomers have moved into the district. This represents that trend that I was sharing with you, that the district is becoming more multilingual. Now, newcomers also represent 5% of the multilingual population. And as we've serviced these students as they've come into the district, 6% of the newcomer population have required case study evaluation services because they have needs that have not yet been identified. Again, as I shared the trend of more multilingual students in the district, the bottom of this graph represents multilingual students in the state of Illinois. The top of this graph represents the trend for the increase in multilingual students for the district. So in 2018, we were at 28.5% multilingual students. This current school year, we're at 42% of the district are multilingual. Now, we share all of this to sort of set a vision for how we want to support our newcomer families as they enter the district. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Ms. Carolina Herrera, who is a social worker in the district, who has worked closely with Ms. Redding and I to build out this process. And she's been instrumental in identifying the needs and really assisting in setting this vision to support our families.
So as we have all been meeting, the team of many different people throughout the district, this year, some things that we wanted to do is to streamline the newcomer registration process. The needs are different than some of our newcomer students, so we want to be sure that the process reflects the needs and that everybody can get into, all the students can get into school as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So on the graphic, that purple part at the bottom is what is traditionally done throughout the district, which is registering online independently. Some of our newcomer families do that and are able to do that without any additional support. However, there are additional needs in some situations. It might be that a family does not have access initially to technology or to the internet to go about registering online themselves, in which case there are iPads available in each school, and families can go and register in the buildings with some simple supports from building secretaries as needed on individual questions. Another thing that we are doing is Silva has been helping to give additional supports and one-on-one supports to families that require assistance with registration. It might be that they have limited literacy skills. It might be that they have limited access or prior experience with technology. So she will set an appointment with them, work with them one-on-one to be sure that all aspects of registration get completed in a timely manner. So that is at increasing levels of support. We give what the families need, and we want to be sure that students get into school as quickly as possible. One additional part of that is that we developed a RAC card, which all of you should have in front of you. So it is two-sided, and on the next slide I'll show it in a larger scale for all of you. But it has a lot of the basic registration information, so that way if a family comes to register to the Welcome Center, or if they call, they have this information laid out, and now it is also on our website, so they can see all of the different documentation that is required in a nice, simple, easy way that is reader-friendly, and all of the phone numbers for Carolina Herrera, Diana Nava, which is the multilingual secretary, and also Eric Otero are on there so that they can get a hold of who they need to get a hold of to be sure that they have the supports they need to be successful. And yeah, I'll go on to the next one. So there's the RAC card. If you do not have one in front of you, you can all see it is double-sided. It has a lot of different information, and all of this information can now also be found on our website as well. So after the initial registration takes place, we want to do further digging to learn about who the students are and what their needs are, because they are different in many situations than a typical student who was born and raised in Round Lake. So the first thing that is done is, after the student has fully registered, the family will have an interview, the parents, the family, the guardian, with the newcomer social worker, and there's a series of questions that have been developed by Carolina Herrera to make sure that we understand the student's complete background, whether it's educational, social, emotional, medical, or other. And then while that is taking place, we are in the process of setting this up, and it is starting to happen, but we want to streamline it even further. So there is also a language screening that takes place for any students that are new to the district, that come from outside the country or from a country that is not a WIDA state. And what WIDA is, it is a consortium that has has all of the tests that we use to screen and assess our multilingual students. So they receive those tests to say what their level of English proficiency is. And then from there, our students that are in high school also will do a language assessment to see what track they would be on for a Spanish course, whether it would be a heritage course or whether they would be more set for an AP track. Additionally, at that time, the family will receive a welcome packet, and the welcome packet is pictured on the right. It is available in English and Spanish, and our goal is to translate it into our top 5 languages. That welcome packet has, it is linked on there, but it has additional information about the hours of school, the locations, and a lot of that important information that families need to know. Also, we want to support families with getting started with technology. So if families are set up with a phone, we want to be sure that they know how to download the Dojo app for elementary, because that's something that's really important for communication. And then also get Infinite Campus or any other apps that they may need, because that is the first step to opening the doors to communication. Additionally, we have backpacks for all students in elementary. They're more elementary, kind of cutesy. And then at the secondary level, they're the more basic backpacks, and they're full of supplies. So it's not all of the supplies on the school list, but it's enough to get the family started, and they can decide what they want to keep at home and what they want to have at school so that the family has things to get started. Finally, with that, in some instances, there is a need to connect with additional wraparound services. And so Eric Otero, who is our community outreach and engagement specialist, will help provide needs or provide resources and help meet some of those needs. In some cases, it might be something like they need access to additional food. They may need warm blankets, different things like that. We want to be sure that our students' basic needs are met so that they can come to school ready to learn. So after students are in the school, we also want to have follow-up steps to be sure that once they're in school, they are transitioning well and that they are getting acclimated to their new environment. So the first thing in middle school and high school that we do is before we can place them in classes, we have to review the transcripts to be sure that they are placed appropriately in classes. On the first day of school in both middle school and high school, there are different procedures in place to have students have little tours with a buddy, and also we'll show them how to get from class to class, because we know that when you're in a totally new environment in a new country, getting to the right place can be a stressor. So we want to set them up for the first positive peer interaction. Additionally, we want to further build out some steps with additional iPad assistance. For some of our students, this is the first time using a device like an iPad, so we want to be sure that they can access everything that they need for their classes and that they become familiar with how to use a locker. Different things like that that we take for granted growing up here in the United States that are new to some of our newcomers. And as needed, there will be additional check-ins with the newcomer social worker. This will look different for every family, depending on where they come from, different things that the family has gone through, and different needs. There will also be a 30-day check-in with the family. So this is with the parents or guardians or whoever the child might be living with, to be sure that their needs as a family are being met. And if there are additional services that they need, we can help connect them with resources. And finally, if any of the teachers, this could be any teacher in the building, it does not have to be a specific newcomer teacher, if they identify needs, because we know that students likely go to their teachers and talk about things that are going on at home. And if a teacher notices that, if they said, like, I was cold last night, I didn't have a blanket, and do you have any extra food because I'm hungry? There's a form that a teacher can fill out that's routed to Eric Otero that will let him know that there are additional needs, so he can reach out to the family, whether it's before a 30-day check-in, after a 30-day check-in, or beyond. And this can be for any student, really, that needs support. It doesn't have to be a newcomer. But we want to be sure that our students get what they need to be successful.
So a big thank you to Gracie Durham, who created the rat card in front of you. That is a sample of what that card will look like, but we'll work with our printer to make sure that that's professionally printed. But we wanted to share that with you. So these efforts really are sort of a cross-district support for our families. This includes Ms. Bennett's department, student services, the multilingual department, technology department, to make sure that our families have what they need. That also includes the Lake County Health Department. We're very fortunate to have our school-based health center, and the Lake County Health Department continues to come through to meet the needs of our families. We met with representatives from the health department and discussed all the needs our families may have, and they were very willing to meet those needs, both at the school-based health center and at Mid Lakes Clinic if families had additional needs. We also want to support our staff with professional development as we provide support for our newcomer families. So that training will focus on aspects like what are newcomers, what are asylum seekers, and what are refugees. Now, as I said before, all refugees are asylum seekers, but not all asylum seekers are refugees. And this isn't information that a lot of us are aware of. So if you're a refugee, you get support in your transportation to enter a safe country like the United States, where an asylum seeker does not receive that support and it's on their own to get to the safe country. In addition, refugees are eligible to have a work permit and work right away. For asylum seekers, it can take up to 2 to 3 years to get that permit. Now, the good thing is that we can provide educational support right away for refugees and asylum seekers, but refugees are open to services that asylum seekers are not. So refugees get case management, they get an attorney, they get other supports as they enter the country where asylum seekers do not. So the families that come into the district who are newcomers are asylum seekers. So as we move forward, we're looking to work with organizations like Refugee One and the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights to make sure that our staff are equipped to support these families. And also, all of these families are eligible for services through the McKinney-Vento Act, and we ensure that they receive those services through Ms. Herrera and Mr. Otero as they come in. We also want to be sure that we educate our staff on the experience of these newcomer families. Some of the stories that our newcomer children are sharing with us, even at the elementary level, are heartbreaking. So we need to make sure that we have trauma-informed practices readily available for these students and families as they come in. So as we look at the overall support, and as we look at our budget assumptions for next school year, we are considering the addition of social work support, so bilingual social work support for our families, and language assessment for these families as they come into the district. But those are items that we're considering. Any questions at this time?
I just want to share with the board before you start asking, not sure you saw it, the governor's budget address. He did in his budget include $180 million request, because he has to have the General Assembly approve it for supporting migrant families. His budget did include, however, an $800 million deficit, which he's got numerous ways to kind of offset the loss. I guess my point is there's also legislation being proposed. I think there's 500 bills right now sitting down at Illinois. And I think there's a couple bills, I can't remember if it's a Senate bill or a House bill, that is focused on migrant families. There just has to be an appropriation, like how are you going to pay for it? So I just thought the board should be aware of that.
I did have a couple questions. You mentioned the language screening with WIDA screener. Is WIDA an acronym for something?
So WIDA stands for the World Class Instructional Design and Assessment.
Okay, so we want to make sure that acronyms are noted in presentations. I know, but I'm not going to remember that, but if I read it, I'm going to remember it. You can tell me that 10 times. It's not my, this is not what I do every day. So it needs to be spelled out for the board.
Thank you. I will next time.
Thank you. Then the next question is the community outreach. who are we using, like mano a mano, or what resources are we using for the families?
Yeah, we're fortunate to have Eric Otero in the district and Maria Kalunga who work with our families. So yes, we would work with Mano a Mano, Prairie State Legal. We would work with the Avon Township Food Bank. Really, any supports families would need. We would enlist the support of all of our community partners.
So are we using just community, or are we reaching out even within other areas of Lake County for the families?
We say all areas of Lake County because we would also work with like the Lake County the Regional Office of Education. They have a lot of supports available for McKinney-Vento or homeless families that we don't necessarily have in the district, but they're very good partners and have a lot of support for our families. But I would say in the community and throughout the county and the state.
And as the families fill out these forms for areas of need, like as I share with teachers or the families fill it out, are we kind of are we tracking so we can see what those needs are and maybe, you know, address those possibly earlier?
Yes, that's a very good question. As we started to build out this process, that's where this kind of all started. It started with Carolina Herrera and Eric Otero coming to Ms. Redding and myself to build these needs out. But yes, we looked at what's the trend, what are the needs. So we started purchasing gift cards for families who need clothing and items right away. So we are tracking those items and then also looking for other opportunities to secure resources for families.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm trying to get my head around the numbers. And so I'm thinking about it. So multilingual families, but my kids have friends that are bilingual. Is that the same?
For our multilingual families, first it starts with the home language survey when they register at the school and they indicate if a language other than English is spoken in the home. And in some cases, there is another language spoken in the home, and the students are not considered multilingual learners. That occurs when they first take that WIDA screener. Any student who is new to schooling, so it could be in kindergarten, or it could be coming from Mexico in 4th grade, or it could be coming from a non-WIDA state like California, for example, and when they come, they would take that screener. If they score below a certain level of English proficiency, they qualify for English language services, which would then, they would be a multilingual learner by our standards.
So multilingual equals ELS, English language services, yes?
Yeah, the ESL or the ELL. There's so many acronyms. LL, ESL, EL.
The multilingual designation is new. We used to say EL, correct? So I think it's this exactly what you're talking about.
As Illinois, as ISB has changed their wording, we've been changing our wording to mirror that as well.
Got it. So it's a bigger subset, newcomer, smaller subset, asylum seeker, next one, and then refugee. It kind of goes like that, right?
Exactly.
So as I'm thinking 40-something%, and as we're thinking about how do we do welcoming and how do we intake families that are coming in, I think I've got two questions. One is, are we learning something that we should just apply to everybody that comes? And then the second question is, I'm just wondering if we should, because it seems to be trending that way anyway, and would it just be simpler just to provide a really, almost like a higher level of intake?
Well, one thing is that we did start these conversations with newcomers in mind, and if you look at the rack card that's in front of you, notice at the top it says new families, because as we were building this out, we realized that this information is not just helpful to newcomer families, but it's helpful to all new families to the Round Lake area, whether they came from a suburb over or a state or two over. It's all good information to have that registration information clearly laid out, and if a family does, if they came from, say, example, Mundelein, and they do need support with registration, all of those tiered supports are also available to them.
I just want to add, you bring up an awesome point, and I think Ms. Redding and Dr. Apgar would agree. If you look at the WIDA standards, they're good for everybody. So I would say this is impacting kind of where we start with our decision making. We actually have to start thinking about when we build a schedule, what happens with special education population, what happens with the needs of our multilinguals first, because it's harder to schedule that because of the certifications. Resource allocation, we're always thinking about that, and the big issue, which is going to continue to be a challenge, is getting people certified in the right areas to meet the needs of our kids. We have the right model, dual language, and we're also having discussions about hard to fill positions and what can we do to get people certified. But even, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but even the English language arts adoption that is going to be coming to the board, we had to give serious consideration to our Spanish language arts program. So it is impacting, and I'm not saying it's bad at all, but that's actually where we start thinking about making our decisions, because I don't see that trend line changing that you saw with the increase of multilingual students. I think that's going to continue.
I mean, based on everything that we're hearing, we're really good at that. We're really good at multilingual families coming in. And so my thought is, let's just roll with it.
Mr. Jewett, you bring up a really good point. So any family who's coming into the district would need support, like going through the technology, how to use your iPad, how to use Canvas, how to use Seesaw. So we worked with Mr. Castens to identify how would we do that. So in addition to that, as we look at the space we have in the district, we're looking how we can better use the Welcome Center to support our newcomer families, support all families. What do those supports need to look like? And that's part of this process as we consider these needs.
Any additional questions from the board? Hearing none, thank you very much for a very well detailed presentation.
Thank you.
And we will now transition to fiscal 25 budget assumptions, and Dr. Kivith.
Okay, so this evening we are sharing an update on fiscal 25 budget assumptions. At the prior Board of Education meeting, we shared both fiscal 24 and 25. This time of the year, we're really moving forward and looking at what fiscal 25 would look like as we're nearing the final quarter of our fiscal year. Drawing your attention to line 2 of the budget assumptions, we've updated that number to reflect our evidence-based funding for fiscal 24. That is a flat number. That is the number that we were approved for receiving for fiscal 24. That is $3,161,453.25. At the last budget assumption document, we had reduced that number to $2,800,000, being very conservative. After some conversations at the Finance Committee table, moving forward with the next fiscal 25 budget assumption, we are going to reduce that number back to the $2,800,000, just to be extra conservative as we move forward based on some information now that we've received about where the state is at and where the federal government is at. As we look at line 5, we've got Title I carryover funds. Those are dollars that are slated for items that you'll hear a little bit more in the budget assumption. That amount that's listed right here is $60,000, and right now that $60,000 is slated for 2 additional driver's education vehicles. Line 25 is a 4.0 certified position that links directly back to some bilingual teachers, and we've heard some reasons this evening why we would need additional support in that area. Line 45, educational, early education EEC workday increase. Next year, as we look at the expansion of our early education center, we know that those positions will require an increase in their day from a 7.5-hour day to an 8.0 day, and that reflection is a budget assumption of $54,819. Line 46 is a 1.0 certified position. That would be for a behind the wheel staff member, in addition to the 2 vehicles that we're recommending with the Title I funds. We need someone to help assist with that instruction. So that 1.0 certified position is listed in line 46. In line 65, we've got phase 1 of the Round Lake High School main gym sound system, and not noted in the memo but is also noted in the budget assumption sheet is line 66. Those are the 2 additional driver's education vehicles that I referenced with the Title I carryover funds earlier in the revenue position. So with those adjustments and those additions to our fiscal 25 budget assumption, we still have a firm budget position of $2,930,626 at this point in March.
So if I could add, following Dr. Kibben's presentation, this was also on the Finance Committee meeting agenda earlier today. And I know you've heard Dr. Kibbens mention these 4 positions in regards to the driver's ed, which were other agenda items on there for finance and for the board for consideration tonight as well. And I'll review those as we dive into those. But again, as we're preparing for the next fiscal year, there have been some changes, obviously, the need with the 4 additional certified positions, which again, I'll dive into a little deeper later, but this is how it presents as of today.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. All right, next up is our communications on our tutoring programming.
All right, good evening. Thank you for having us here today to talk about our tutoring program here in Round Lake. So I'm going to start by talking about the Twilight Tutoring program that we have. And I just wanted to start by sharing some of the success stories that we've had so far. So one of our E&L resource teachers, oh yeah, thank you, at elementary level has stated that some of the parents like sitting next to the students during the tutoring sessions, and they kind of work together in it, so the families are learning together as they go through the lessons, and it's the best part. They enjoy having the parents be a part of it. We also have one of our special education teachers that work with them as well, and she saw students make great growth, so level B to a level J, which is a pretty big jump in a single year for reading levels, and that the student has more confidence in it, is willing to take more risks, and it allows the teacher to see really what the student knows in that one-on-one session. And then parents have also walked away with additional ideas of how they can support the students. So watching the teacher read with her student, the parent was able to start seeing the impact of having the student summarize what they read and taking breaks and pauses so that the student is able to kind of really explain their thinking as they go through it. So this is just a little bit of information about the tutors that we currently are offering their services. So at the elementary level, we do have 16 tutors. 9 of them are monolingual, and it also includes a special education resource teacher as well. And we also have 7 dual language teachers that offer services at the elementary level. At middle school, we have 13 tutors. 3 of them are English language arts teachers, and one of those is a special education teacher. 7 math teachers are tutors, and that also includes someone that is a special education teacher, and 1 teacher is a bilingual teacher. We also have a science teacher that is a science and SPED teacher, and then we have 3 social studies teachers. At the high school level, we do have 7 tutors. 1 of them is for English language arts, 5 math teachers, 1 of them being bilingual, and 1 science teacher that is special education. So who are the students that we have that are attending tutoring? So 465 students have attended Twilight Tutoring this school year. 34 of them are high school students, 181 of them are middle school students, and 250 of them are elementary students. You might notice that the high school students are much lower than the rest of the students. High school does offer tutoring during the school day for every subject area, so there is tutoring available each period that students can attend. And we also know that a lot of our high schoolers, the older they get, the more after-school responsibilities they have to attend. So we do know that tutoring during the day is pretty well attended at the high school, so we are seeing less attendance during twilight tutoring. In elementary, the parents are very involved in signing up the students and are making sure that they're attending, so we do have a higher number of students at the elementary level in attendance. So twilight tutoring is currently paid from through ESSER funding. Our teachers are paid at the hourly rate of $40.51. So the numbers below are all from when we started tutoring September 5th through March 11th when the numbers were run. So elementary, they've had about a little over 1,800 hours of tutoring completed, which comes to about $74,000. Middle school has had 837 hours, which has come to about $34,000. High school has only had about 61 hours at $2,456. The teachers also have the benefits that are included in that when we run it through payroll. So the total cost for tutoring from September 5th through March 11th is $1,869.10. That is it for twilight tutoring. We're going to go into some of the other tutoring programs, but are there any questions that you guys have that the board has for in regards to twilight tutoring?
I'd like to hear the whole presentation, then I know I'll have some questions.
Taller, Katie. All right, so we're going to continue through the different tutoring program. And the next program we wanted to cover was the Student Outreach for Academic Resilience program that was started this year at the middle school level. I worked this year with all of our building principals to help increase their understanding of grants and what we have within the grants and how grants are allocated, and then gave them a little bit of ownership to look at what are some things that they specifically have in their schools where they'd like to see some improvement. And we definitely, as a whole administrative team, have really been pushing academic achievement, attending to the Illinois Assessment for Readiness. So I have to give credit to Round Lake Middle. They started this idea, came to me with, what about doing some kind of after-school tutoring? I think I have staff that would jump on this and had some great ideas. So I worked closely with Joe Williams and Dave Higgs. They developed the program. The tricky piece is there's more title funding available for Round Lake Middle because it's allocated by enrollment and they're a larger school. So they had a little bit more freedom because they had more dollars. But then we got creative and we found after school grant funding to be able to support this same type of programming at McGee so that both middle schools could offer this opportunity for their students. So as it's noted on this slide, this program was funded through Title I for Round Lake Middle and the after school grant for McGee. There's a total cost there of approximately $37,000 with some additional benefit costs. The way we broke out the program was we have 12 teachers running at each of the schools, 4 teachers for each grade level. They did try for every content area at each grade level to be filled. It's about a little bit over 1.33 hours per day. They run it Monday through Thursday. Transportation is provided. And then it'll end up being a program that started on January 22nd. It will run through May 16th. So a total of 58 days with $40.51 being our hourly tutor rate that our teachers are paid. So that covers the finance side and breakdown for the program at both schools. So when you look at the overview of the program, it's kind of interesting because McGee, you can see, has 114 students that so far have been involved, which is a higher number than what we're seeing at Round Lake Middle with 82 students. However, Round Lake Middle has quite a bit more students students that are repeating and continuing to come multiple times a week and sticking to kind of a schedule. So I think it'll be really interesting when we review results of kind of student performance to see where there's a greater impact. My general sense here is that you have kids at McGee that are potentially taking advantage of sort of the homework help and popping in occasionally, using it that way. Whereas I know that Round Lake Middle really took a look at like academic performance and tried to form groups of students that needed support and specific skills. So again, it'll be really kind of beneficial, and I'll talk towards the end about what are we going to do to look at how student achievement increased and try our best to kind of correlate that to what was being done in the programs, and if there's any potential different practices between the two schools that may have found greater achievement. So I do have to note on the original board packet, this said 18,000 hours and 16,382 hours. And thankfully Katie caught that because we were like, Katie's like, wait, like, yeah, no. So we did make that adjustment. It's corrected in the board packet and corrected here. But the number of minutes, because they're running 20 minutes of small group in each of these, is what the principals were kind of looking for. Of course, I asked for their feedback and asked them to develop some slides and what they would like to share with all of you. So that is just kind of a breakdown of how many minutes will be delivered within the program. So what happens in this a little bit over an hour session, there's really 3 different pieces that they break it down into. They have bell ringer activities that were specifically created by teachers connected to those Illinois Assessment for Readiness type skills that students are expected to show mastery of on the assessment. And so they have just kind of practice questions that mirror what the test questions look like. They also deliver 20 minutes of small group instruction where they're really focusing on a particular skill. It's not just a practice question for kids, it's more instruction driven. And then the last 20 minutes is time for them to work on any type of homework or things that they may need to be successful in the classroom. So just a couple of fun success stories. I asked the principals to kind of talk to the teachers and get some feedback from teachers of where they saw some success occurring. So at McGee, you can see there are a student there, a 7th grader specifically in math, that was able to increase their success within the classroom, moving from getting lots of 0s and 1s on assessments and moving that more into the 2s and building really some math confidence, which is definitely always a challenge in math. And then the second example there is an 8th grader who really just ended up focusing a lot on looks like raised their grade as well and focusing on grades. When I looked at the Round Lake Middle examples here and reviewed those, it's nice to see there's some clear connection here to their summative rating and paying attention to where students are underperforming. When we look at our school report card, we know we need to support all kids, but Round Lake Middle is identified for their multilingual students, but also for their students with IEPs. So you can see that they do have attendance of students that fall into both of those subgroups. And there's also some different pieces of specific student examples where they were excited to see students improving their achievement and gaining some level of confidence as well. So then the next program that we're right now diving into and doing more research on, doing a small pilot, but also partnering with the tech department to get up and going. The Regional Office of Education is currently offering through all the way through 2027, a free program for us. The name of the program is Varsity Tutors, and they offer a lot of different services, but what is originally determined to be free is really an online chat tool. We anticipate from what Katie and I have dug into it on is that it will be probably pretty successful and useful at the high school level. Like she mentioned, our high school kids are typically very busy, lots of responsibilities after school. And they also tend to need sort of that like in the moment support as a high school student. Twilight tutoring requires you plan a lot ahead. And if at least the high school children that I live with, that's not always a great skill set. But it's also just not always realistic, that, am I going to need help next week and schedule that with a tutor? Whereas Varsity Tutoring is an online chat tool where right away, if I have a question, if I need support on a math problem, if I have a question about science, they work through it with the students. So we've worked with Dan and his tech team to get Varsity Tutors integrated, just got confirmation within the last couple of weeks that is good to go. So we'll be working to get that up and going to kids, but we need to learn a lot more about how to roll it out. So Katie and I had a call with the vendor last week, I believe, yes, to kind of build out an implementation plan. So this is very much in the beginning. But Dr. Carner, the regional office superintendent, also invited us to participate in a free pilot of their actual live tutoring. So Katie and I worked with actually through the middle school SOAR program and identified 2 small groups, and those kids will get live tutoring through Varsity Tutors. It'll be 2 small groups, 5 students in each group. They're going to focus on math, and they do an assessment. The tutors then review the assessment data, develop lessons. So Dr. Carner then will be working with Varsity Tutors to provide us with some data on how students perform. That pilot is 2 times a week, 30 minutes through the month of April. So we're still in very, very beginning phase of kind of vetting out this possibility, but knowing that the regional office has provided this to us at no cost is certainly something we don't want to pass up. So we're still doing a lot of digging, but we anticipate being able to launch some of the supports. They do also offer some like free SAT prep, some other type enrichment, free like self-paced classes. So there's a lot of stuff on their platform, but again, we're still digging in to decide what's the best use case for us as a district. So that covers kind of where we're at with tutoring in the district. Any questions?
I do. I have a few questions. You're kind of outside looking at it. It looks like it's just a tutoring program. In reading in the presentation between SOAR and Twilight Tutoring, it just looks like the days and times and along meal and transportation being the difference between SOAR and Twilight. Is that really the difference? Because I'm not sure really what the difference is that we implemented another tutoring program.
Twilight, it would be considered like virtual. It's in their home. So when you say transportation, yes, they don't have to go anywhere. They can stay home to receive that support. Whereas the SOAR program, they stay after school and they're with a teacher face to face. So that's a little bit of a difference.
That's where I was trying to figure out what's the nuance that makes it different. And I ask that because I've had a few parents talk to me about SOAR, but not knowing the real difference between Twilight and SOAR. I wasn't sure what it was and why they really liked SOAR better.
What I have heard from actually teachers at the middle school level doesn't surprise me at all when I think about middle school kids is it's a way to be connected to the school. Twilight tutoring, what we find is the kids that sign up have teachers that are tutors. So SOAR is an opportunity where there's 12 teachers across the school, multiple grade levels. Kids start talking about it, and they're middle school kids. So like, hey, come hang out at this thing after school. The word is getting out that there's something going on at school, whereas Twilight tutoring really is a lot more dependent kind of on a parent. I would argue a lot of our middle school kids might not go out and get on Calendly and schedule times and things. So I think that has been a big piece of why SOAR. I was even talking to one of the math teachers, and he was just saying like, oh, wow, like surprised by the kids that have jumped into SOAR sometimes because they're high flyers. But heck, we'll take high flyers, anybody, to provide more additional support on their achievement. So
then are we looking to do something like SOAR at the middle school in the elementary schools?
At this time, I would say we aren't. The trickiest part about all of this, the reason why I wanted to do this year is actually centered around funding. Because with ESSER money going away, we have to determine where we're going to get the best bang for our buck. When Varsity Tutors came in, that was like, oh wow, it could be free, but we still have, that isn't a face-to-face tutoring, that's a chat. Now Dr. Carner is doing the pilot and we'll see where that goes. But we gotta pay attention to the dollars and decide is SOAR where we wanna put our money for middle school and no Twilight tutoring, just Twilight for elementary, because I don't know, we'll work on it as a team, but will we have the funding to support both of them at the extent that we've been able to do with ESSER funds? I don't feel super confident we could pull that off.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question with Twilight tutoring being funded by ESSER, and as we know, those funds will be going away. What are we planning for then the elementary? Because that's all they have right now.
Correct. So I don't anticipate removing any, like completely removing a tutor. I think Twilight tutoring, we've seen too many success stories. Now I do want to say, the one thing I forgot to mention is Katie and I, when we get to the end of the school year, we are going to look at achievement data, because although we could certainly say there's power in building a strong relationship with your teacher through tutoring. If it's not actually academically impacting you, then it's hard in some ways to justify the funding. So we will look at IAR data when our new scores come in and tie that. We'll pull who are the kids that were in SOAR regularly. We'll kind of come up with a standard. And same thing with Twilight tutoring. If they're regularly seeing a tutor, how is it impacting their grades? But also really, how is it impacting their IAR and their MAP score? So we'll be looking at that. So when we do come back and say, okay, these are the tutoring programs we're going to offer, we'll kind of have the data to back up. This is why we didn't continue with SOAR and we stuck with Twilight tutoring, or vice versa.
Okay, then I definitely look forward to a follow-up report to see where we land. Because again, this is a support to our students and to our families. We haven't really had a presentation like this before, and I know it came about because I requested it, and I requested it because I had so many parents come up to me asking me and telling me about SOAR, and I'm thinking, I don't really know, but let's keep talking because I want to know.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely come back with kind of what's the plan for next year and where are the funding sources, and we'll give you the details.
And as we would with everything else, there'll be a value proposition with this. This will be rolled into our budget assumption process, and if Dr. Steffen and her team say, yes, this is something that's a priority for us, we're getting good student outcomes, this is going to move up on our request list, and then we'll talk about kind of like with the second phase of the sound system. It all gets thrown into a bucket. We talk about it. We bring recommendations back to the board on how we're going to fund it. So,
thank you. I appreciate the presentation. Like I said, I did have questions, so a lot was in the presentation, and then my follow-up questions. So thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you very much. Hearing no additional questions. Next up, we will transition to our COSBA National Conference recaps, and I will turn it over to Mr. Jewett and Mr. Greta McGinley.
I think last time when we met, I shared that it was a really good conference. I thought COSBA did a really nice job in terms of how they, everything from the speakers to, it seemed like they didn't spare any expense on the general sessions. It seemed a really nice balance of general sessions and breakout. And also, even those that had vendors, it didn't feel like they were trying to sell us something. It really felt like they were trying to provide value, which I really appreciated, and I don't always see that. So some of the themes that I saw predominantly came out to three themes for me, at least that I maybe gravitated towards, and Annette may actually bring this one up because we were talking about it. So one was fostering the power of executive function. As we were thinking about, as we were in this, it was about how do you develop executive function? And while we were going through the strategic plan, one of the pieces that we were discussing, we should explore how do you develop grit into our with our students. And it's somewhat kind of fuzzy on how we end up doing that. And then she had a whole presentation on where that comes from, how you do it, what is actually appropriate grit for somebody in the different age levels and so on. And so it was, and she definitely shared that this is certainly a need and something that we should be exploring and really encouraging people to be exploring that and moving in that direction. So two things. One, I was encouraged that we're heading in that right direction, and then I was encouraged that this may be a resource that we should consider to explore and bringing that as we look to adopt that portion on the strategic plan in terms of Portrait of a Graduate. The second one is was all about AI. There was obviously a lot about AI in terms of the implementation, the dangers, the standards. And one thing was interesting, the Missouri State Board, their school board association have made a decision that we are going to just go all in. We're going to just try to be leaders in terms of trying to figure this out. So they are exploring ways to, what are some of the things we need to think about in terms of school safety, in terms of data safety, in terms of what are some of the programs and all the things to think about. And so I really appreciated that they were there and said, this is not just for Missouri. If you want to see what we're doing and borrow, use, steal any of the tools that we have, we'd be happy to go ahead and provide that. One of the things I thought was interesting, an example, so there's an open and a closed system within the large language models. And so you can share information and then get the tools to go ahead and process that information. And even if we have, one of the things that they had mentioned, that even if we have really strong controls and really strong practices to do that, to protect our student data or to protect our financial data or other things that some of the vendors that we have may not. And so that will be something that we even want to consider, that the relationships that we get involved with, we want to make sure, just like any vendor would do background screening for the people that interact with our students, we want to make sure that the organizations that work with us also protect the data that we share with them. And then the third one was, which I thought was really interesting, was lesson learned from an emergency that didn't happen. So it was a gentleman that has done a lot of things around, especially around things like school shootings and things, and he'd been involved in a lot of those events. But one of the things he shared was when an event happens, a near miss, maybe finding a weapon, or maybe things that just didn't happen, or like a fake bomb scare, or because we were actually there at the same time that that stuff that had gone on here, so it was very relevant. But he said what we have a tendency to do is that we're like, whew, glad that is over and want to move past that. And instead of actually taking that time and that lesson, okay, what went well, and really do a debrief. What went well? What are we learning about it? What are we learning about where we have potential gaps? Because unfortunately, if we can't necessarily prevent everything, because bad people are bad people, but we can be as prepared as we can be. So it was using those times as practice runs and to learn from when things don't happen. And those are the three kind of the big pieces. But and Dallas was 72 and sunny. So that was really nice.
I'm glad to hear about the last thing you said. I think we've,
72 and sunny?
yeah, well, no, the one before that. I actually will be there next weekend. So, but we've made it a habit. I think without getting into specifics, we've had this year several, I call them boulder issues. And we've made it a habit of running after action reports, and we do everything that you're talking about. All the key stakeholders in the room. How did we handle it? What did we do well? What didn't we? What do we need to do better? Heather typically runs those because she oversees district safety. So she's developed a really, really good process and form for us to document where we need to improve.
This may not be the right, but I want to hold on to that. That may be something that we want to consider bringing back when we think about future topics, because this is something that we're doing would be really great to hear.
Thank you. Yes, so we were in Dallas at the COSBA. I had the privilege of attending last year for the inaugural COSBA conference, and then this year. And we thought last year the COSBA conference was really well, and it was even better this second year around. Again, the general session and the speakers they had were really, really good. And I know Mr. DeVere and I thought last year one of those presenters were really, really good, and they were just as good this year, and some were even better. And as Mr. Jewett mentioned, the conference or the general session with the executive function, and she talked about dysfunction, and then mental GPS. It's a great presentation. I know we've included our handouts, so I hope administration and the board preview that. A couple of things that I had attended that I definitely like to speak to and share. I attended one because when I was looking at what was being offered, I had saw that we had posted on our social media about therapy dogs. And they had a session called Going to the Dogs. So I thought it was a great session, which will lead me to my future agenda item, which is how and when and where are we pulling in these therapy dogs? How are we using that? Knowing what I've learned from that, I think would be a great topic for the board to learn and to share. A couple other things, as like Mr. Jewett said, coming out of strategic planning and our portrait of the graduate, I met a vendor who I approached. I was not approached by them, where they have these graduate follow-up surveys and exit surveys. So I brought all this. I apologize I didn't get it scanned into the board packet. But as we talk about looking at the portrait of a graduate, I think we have to look at those that have graduated and where maybe we are shortchanging them or we're not meeting that expectation of what we're expecting our graduate to look at. So there are these programs out there where we can do, and I'll share this, I'll leave this with Dr. Mendoza, but graduate follow-up programs. And I did get the cost. It's not a lot of money. I know where our dollars go, and this would not be a lot of money to spend to get this data if we're really serious about what the portrait of a graduate looks like. And they offered them on other things as well, but a senior exit survey, graduate follow-up programs. And this one, because we talked about in our strategic plan about following up with alumni, what are they doing? Again, this does it as well. And they go 5 years out. So again, we can start collecting that data, getting that on our seniors who are exiting and those 5 years out. So I'll leave that with Dr. Mendoza. I know Mrs. Klingler is not here, but we have the opportunity to play Jeopardy, and that was fun. It was on school law, so that was a great session. Did the science of reading. Again, I included that, and I also attended a session on sponsorship. I know we have our sponsorship program at the high school here with the scoreboard, and I mentioned to Mrs. Bennett that I'd like to share that information with her because I think we still have some opportunities to explore there. But it was a really good conference. I really have enjoyed attending COSWA the last 2 years. I definitely encourage those who haven't attended yet, and when we have those conversations, which I guess will be later this year, really encourage somebody else to attend. I really think you'll enjoy it. And again, thank you for the opportunity to attend.
Thank you both. Sounds awesome as always, and I know the three of us are looking forward to presenting what we get to see and learn down in New Orleans for NSBA and compare some notes as well. All right, next up, we will transition to the strategic plan monthly report update for March of 2024.
Yep, just you have the information in front of you, but wanted to call out a couple. A2, we are actually ahead of schedule with the EEC project. Combination of, frankly, having great leadership and work in the department coupled with some pretty cooperative weather. Jess Crone, very involved in this Lake County Needs Assessment, a consortium of stakeholders in the county, really getting together to talk about internships. We haven't really talked about that, but that's one area that I see that is going to be a little bit challenging because all the schools in the county are fighting over the same internships. So I know, Peg, you work in a high school, you know what I'm talking about. And so I actually, with the new PACE framework and some of the endorsements, I worry a little bit about the musical chairs and not enough seats for people. But we'll keep updating you on that. It's something that is definitely a priority for us. A little bit premature, but Dr. Stefan and the team, Sarah Fontana, have done just another incredible job with ELA adoption. Certainly not being presumptuous, but we anticipate bringing something forward for the board's consideration. Just the entire process they used was exceptional, so I want to thank them. And then we're right in the middle. That's B1. And then we're right in the middle of the 5 essentials, which impacts our overall school rating. So we remain hard at work, even though it's March. We've got another strategic plan coming. I would also say there'll be multiple meetings in April where we'll be bringing information for the board's consideration connected to the new strategic plan. So those are just some brief highlights.
Thank you for that. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, we will move to any questions from the board on disposal of materials dated 3/18/24. All right, next up then is review of contracts less than 1,000. Looks like we had one. Overflow parking. Any questions from the board? All right, hearing none there, we will move next to the opportunity for public comment. As always, members of the public may participate in public comment during regular board meetings by attending in person or submitting an electronic public comment form. Please note that speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Electronic public comments will be accepted up until noon on the day of the regular scheduled meeting. Public commenter will be contacted to confirm identity and public comment provided to all board members in written form. We did not have any electronic public comment this cycle and don't see any public here, unfortunately. So hearing no public comment, we will now transition straight to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Board President Francisco and School Board. As you're aware, we are just really pleased to be able to communicate the following staff members that have been nominated for the Lake County Regional Office of Education Awards. They are doing it different this year. If my memory is correct, I think we had 800 people, give or take, in the fairgrounds, if my memory is correct, last year. And so I think everybody remembers like the volume. So we can still nominate as many people as we want, but at the local level, we can only send one person per category to go to the dinner. So here are the following recommendations for the district. Patty Hare, elementary classroom teacher. She teaches at Pleviac. Carly Martin, high school classroom teacher. Spanish here at the high school. Kelly DeBuff, diverse learner classroom teacher. She's a special education teacher and specialist. Terrell Yarbrough, early career educator category. He's a 3rd grade teacher at Village. Nathaniel Conklin, educational service personnel, teacher's assistant at John T. McGee Middle School. Aaron Stolp, student support personnel, speech language pathologist at Village. And Jeff King, school administrator, the principal at John T. McGee Middle School. And we might have one more, we do have one more nomination. Do we have the name? Do you want to just, because I think they were light on one category, so Dr. Carter reached out to all the districts, and so I'll defer to Heather.
So last year, I think it was, or maybe the year before, they had a focus on school nurses. This year, the focus is on custodial or maintenance workers, so they asked for an extra nomination. So even outside of what category that would fall into normally. So asking Dr. Lamping and Ted Richter who they would recommend. They recommended Quinn Leong, who is a custodian at the EEC, the Early Education Center.
She is super positive. I mean, always in a great mood. Yeah, she's really good. So anyway, these individuals are invited to attend and be recognized. Obviously, the board is invited. We certainly hope you can attend. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
So I have a
Please.
So will we get the May 8th awards banquet on our calendar if it's not already?
It's on there.
It is. Okay. Thank you.
just clarifying on that, you had the placeholders there. If we can just get the timing locked down on it, that'd be appreciated. All right, next up then is Finance Committee had a meeting prior to our general meeting tonight, so take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, so finance met earlier, so a lot of the agenda items we'll see later tonight, including the prom DJ contract. We heard about the fiscal 25 budget. We'll see later the RLAS alarm. We talked a little bit about the bilingual teachers that'll be coming up. By-board cooperative, driver's education, and the high school sound system. So the items that are not on this agenda, there were 2 requests for National Science Teacher Association contract. This would be professional development for all our high school teachers. That would take place on the 17th, 20th, 21st, and 22nd, which are, there's testing, and then of course the 22nd is a Teacher Institute Day. And then University of Illinois Cook County Extension Office contract. Again, this is a teacher supported program for all our science teachers. Again, it would be held on the 22nd, which is a Teacher Institute Day. And then regarding graduation, as you know, it's going to be graduation season before we know it for both high school graduation and middle school promotion. And as we did the years prior, we have a sound rental agreement with TC Furlong, who's hosted or has done the additional sound and mics required for those 2 events. We just had some questions regarding that contract and the sound. We asked about, the band will get an additional microphone, but we asked about the choir. I know as we've sat up on stage, we all have a hard time hearing the choir, and we sit right next to them, so if we can't hear them, I can't imagine anyone sitting out in the stadium, the parents can hear their students perform. So we asked about making sure they have the extra mic or better coordination so that we can hear them. I know those students are projecting and trying to do really well, but we do need to make sure they have the proper sound as well. So that'll come back. Those items will come back at the next April meeting. And then, like I said, the other items, I'll go into detail as those come up on the regular agenda item. Mr. DeVera, anything to add? That's it for now.
Thank you very much. Hearing no additional questions, we'll go to approval.
I need a motion to approve the March 11th, 2024 regular board meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Lee. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the consent agenda for the following items. The accounts payable report for $414,538.35. Previous motions report for $352,033.98. February 2024 treasurer's report, February 2024 P-card report, and the March 18th, 2024 employment report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Lee. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Old business. I need a motion to approve the proposal for the Round Lake and McGee Middle School trip to Washington, D.C., Saturday, March 1st through Monday, March 3rd, 2025, over the Casimir-Pulaski holiday.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Tavera. Roll call, please.
Oh, can I just
Oh,
add?
please.
Thank you. So I know they presented last meeting, there were some questions posed by the board, so hopefully everyone read the update and the weekly update regarding the response back to those. So thank you for getting that back to us regarding fundraising and then communication to those families. So I just wanted to make sure everyone saw that.
Hearing no additional clarifications, roll call please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. I need a motion to approve the contract to have DJ Fly Tie work the 2024 prom on May 4th, 2024.
So moved.
How can I say no? Second.
Motion by Miss Lee, seconded by Mr. Jewett.
If I can just add, this was on the finance agenda earlier this evening, reviewing the contract. So we are all good there. I'm sure it'll be a great time.
Please, roll call please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the Pixter contract for the 2024 RLHS prom on May 4th, 2024 in the amount of $1,895.
So moved. Second.
Motion. I was gonna say, motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Mr. Jewett. I'm guessing they're worried about it spinning around and whacking people?
No, it's the copyright over Pixar.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So I can speak to this one. This was on RLAS Finance. Again, this is the 360 camera. So again, making sure liability, insurance, all that is in play. This is the second year that they are doing this. We'll talk about copyright infringement next time.
Hearing no other pending questions, roll call please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the enrollment in By Board National Cooperative.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Tavera.
And again, this was on the finance agenda. There is no cost for this. This is just enrollment into another cooperative for the district. This By Board came about, as you heard the administration propose or speak to previously regarding the two middle schools and doing weight room renovations and adding new equipment to get the equipment at a competitive price. We have to go through By Board. And as we are part of many cooperatives and how we get many things here within the district, this was not one we were a part of. So this is joining this cooperative so we can get that equipment for the two middle schools. And of course, it could present other opportunities down the road as well. Again, no cost. We just need to agree as board.
It's kind of minor, but would that be in contracts under 1,000?
No, because these are purchases that can exceed, and the weight room is definitely more than $1,000.
And that's what the total cost that's listed on here is based on the weight room number where it has the total cost of $18.95.
That's we'll have to go through the co-op like we will, and it'll come back.
Right, thank you. But that total cost is the total cost for the weight room component, not
Correct.
for
Not for
just,
not
correct.
for joining the By Board. Correct.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve 4.0 FTE bilingual teachers.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Francisco, seconded by Mr. Jewett.
So again, this was on the finance committee as well, and as you heard in the presentation earlier by Dr. Apgar, and as you heard Dr. Kibbins speak to earlier in regards to the fiscal year 25 budget, and as they are planning for next year's school year, there is a need for 4 additional bilingual teachers, 3 at Round Lake Middle and 1 at McGee. Again, the question that came about is because we've done some assumptions for next year with teachers allocation. How did these 4 came up? And kind of as you heard in the presentation earlier by Dr. Apgar, that increase in multilingual and having that support for them. The other question that came out is, do we have the space for 3 additional teachers at Round Lake Middle and then 1 at McGee? And they said that we do, that will be all absorbed.
Ms. McGinley, correct me if I'm wrong, and Dr. Apgar, I believe we were looking for support from finance, but no action
Yes.
tonight to
Correct.
post.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yep, so there won't be, we're not looking for a roll call.
It's just a discussion, yes,
Yep,
thank you.
and
They want to be able to post these positions.
Then by all means.
Is that a consensus?
Yes.
Okay.
I was a little confused by the squidgle.
That's why I was asking.
Yep, sounds like we have full consensus on that.
Thank you, Dr. Mendoza. All right. Now I need a motion to approve the superintendent to enter into an agreement not to exceed $125,000 with our selected AV vendor to replace the existing obsolete high school main gym sound system.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Ms. Lee.
So again, this was at the finance meeting this week, and actually it's probably been at the finance meeting for the last couple months. As we all know, the high school sound system is beyond repair and sometimes not operable at events. So this is to replace and leave room for an upgrade, as we talked about previously, and having integrations with the theater, visual boards out in the gathering stair area. So the $125,000 is to replace that current sound system and leave room to do that phase 2, which they will look at in the next following year's budget assumptions. And this work would not start until after graduation. Obviously, we wouldn't want to do any repair or dismantle the sound system we have that is currently still kind of working until after we get through graduation season.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee? Yes.
Motion carries.
Driver's ed's a discussion item as well.
All right, then next up is driver's ed request discussion item.
Was it supposed to be action?
who's doing the driver's ed item? No, just go ahead up. We're doing the driver's ed.
It's a discussion item.
Yeah.
Is it supposed to be a motion? Because it's not listed as a
Yeah,
motion.
there's not a motion listed here.
It should not be.
No, I apologize. It was just like Dr. Mendoza requested that we bring it forward, just like the bilingual positions.
Okay,
So they would be
just
just,
checking.
so we
All
could post them. That's
All right.
actually what I was asking him
Okay.
about.
All right, yeah, so this was on the finance agenda, again, as you heard Dr. Kibbins mention in the fiscal year 25, using title funds to purchase 2 vehicles and then district funds to add a driver's ed teacher. It's no secret that getting your child scheduled in driver's ed can be difficult. So obviously with this addition, This should alleviate some of those issues. We know I think administration has heard that it needs to happen. So again, title money to purchase the vehicles, and again, conversation with Dr. Kimmons, making sure we buy appropriate cars, and then of course, getting the additional teacher.
And as clarification, we're looking at that where we would basically be bringing that online ASAP so that we'd have students using those by the coming summer at the latest, hopefully.
That would be our goal. I know obviously Dr. Kimmons has to go through the process of purchasing, but it is a grant amendment that's being submitted this month. So upon approval from ISB, we can release the funds and go after it. So we have to make the purchase by June 30th. So our goal would be way before that, even during summer school, we could be running driver's ed and behind the wheel.
And just as an update, I do have 2 vehicles that I've been watching at the current dealership that we've previously purchased from. Raymond Chevrolet has been a great partner with Round Lake School District. We want to look to buy in the pre-certified, gently loved direction, so we don't have to bid it. And the 2 vehicles that I'm looking at would be within keeping of our current vehicles, but also would meet any type of purchasing requirements according to board policy.
Thank you.
And we love making sure they're certified owned, just so you know.
All right, next up, we will go to the approval of bid award for the fire alarm systems at Ellis.
I need a motion to approve the bid award to MK Industries, Inc. in the amount of $306,044 for the replacement of the fire alarm system at Raymond Ellis Elementary School.
So moved.
And it's okay. I know we want to definitely do this. That is going to be funded out of the DECO grant, the DCEO grant.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Francisco. Any additional from finance?
Thank you. Again, this was on the finance committee. This is a replacement fire alarm system for Ellis Elementary. We originally were looking to do Ellis and Village. Again, with the few things that'll be happening over the summer as we transition to partner school, trying to keep things so that they're manageable. Also with Ellis and moving to the partner school, Ellis will be getting the new mobile, and we need to make sure that new mobile is integrated into that fire system as well, fire alarm system. And then we'll hopefully do Village, and I mean, there's other schools we had to do as well, but those other schools are all on the dockets as we move forward, but it will be Ellis this year, and the new mobile that will be going there. Anything I missed, Dr. Lampy?
Thank you for that. Hearing no additional questions, we will go to roll call.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Miss Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, I need a motion to approve the resolution of the honorable dismissal of teacher.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Miss Lee.
Do we want clarification on the? You go ahead, Dr.
It's ESSER, it was an ESSER funded position. So we do have a no RIF agreement for next year, but this was an ESSER funded. I want to give the team, I mean, I don't know if you remember, 3 years ago, we had a long list of ESSER positions, and what we've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years is reducing through attrition. So this is the last one, so.
This is the process you legally have to take in order to do this. It's an honorable dismissal. The individual is aware of this and was made aware of it back in December when all of the other moves were made and people were notified. So she is aware.
And just as a follow-up, this is the normal list that if we were in a normal year where we didn't have a no RIF agreement, this would have been a much longer list because of that. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries. And that brings us to positive occurrences.
I'll start with one. I know, was it last week? We did the pizza challenge. Mr. Francisco and I got to sit as judges for the yearly pizza challenge, which is always really fun to watch the students come in and make pizzas and see their creations and then eagerly watch us taste and judge. And Beach was the winner this year.
Yep.
But it's always fun. So I appreciate the opportunity. And again, thanks to Organic Life for doing that for our students. What did they?
That was the Buffalo.
Buffalo?
That was that Buffalo basil.
I can't remember. They were all really good, though. They really all were really good.
And that completed the entire cycle. That was the 3-year cycle. So we'd done the middle schools was the first one, then the high schools was last year, and then this year was the elementary school. So Organic Life was talking during that we're looking at going to probably next year a pasta challenge, and then rotating it basically the same way, getting all 3 of those levels to do the pasta challenges going forward. So looking forward to that. As long as we don't set off smoke detectors in the library.
Cafeteria. But there's great pictures on social media of the pizza challenge if you want to go out and see them.
I'll throw out there positive occurrences. Got to see the girls soccer team take the field when in their opening couple games here at the stadium. Everything looked great. Amazing weather. I'm waiting to have to pay the piper on this one. But amazing weather there. Boys volleyball, as you heard with Will, who's on the team. They will launch the season tomorrow afternoon down at Larkin for their season opener. Both JV, JV2, and varsity are all down there. I'm sure I'm missing something. Choir.
The choirs and the bands went down to Northeastern last week, and they performed and then had a special training and did great things, I heard.
And then I know Winter Guard had its final competition. I think they finished 6th in that final one, which is one of the highest ones they finished overall in that last season-ending championship. And of course, they've graduated all the way to the top tier now. So that program continues to excel and just keep on moving up the list. Nope, no. All right, so next up, negative side of the room, we'll go to future agenda items. Any future agenda items?
Well, I kind of alluded to mine when I gave my presentation on COSBA, which is therapy dogs. So again, I know I've seen posts where they're coming into the schools. So I would love to hear on how we do that.
And if we could have therapy dogs at board meetings.
That would be good.
The board, just respectfully, are you okay if the administration prioritizes like when to bring these to you? It's not good or bad, but I have 4 that you've asked for. We've got therapy, dogs, Schuler, after action reports, and the middle school wrestling. It's totally fine. And I think a couple of these we can squeeze into a meeting. I just didn't know if any of them were pressing.
Yeah, this one wasn't like pressing. It's
Okay.
just, like I said, doing the class at the conference.
Yeah.
It definitely brought forward some questions that I think would be good to share. Because at least I know I see the posts on social media and I've had some questions, but now attending this class, it definitely brought some things to the forefront. So
I don't
that's
know if I
nice.
had questions when I see the social media. I just want to hug the dog, but that's a different story.
If you want to bring a dog to the, when you do the presentation, that's fine too.
All right, hearing no additional future agenda items, we'll move to some approval of closed session minutes.
I need a motion to approve the closed session minutes of February 26, 2024 regular board meeting.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Tavera. Hearing no questions, roll call please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the February 27th, 2024 special board meeting expulsion hearing minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Tavera, seconded by Mr. Jewett. Nope, sorry, Ms. Larson. One of those. I'm falling asleep already. So here we go. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Abstain.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the March 5th, 2024 special board meeting closed session expulsion hearing, 5:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Lee, seconded by Ms. Larson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
I think you abstain on that one.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Abstain.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I need a motion to approve the closed session meeting minutes of the March 5th, 2024 special board meeting expulsion hearing at 6:30 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Lee, seconded by Ms. Larson. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
I abstain.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Abstain.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, next up, I'll need a motion to convene in closed session as permitted by statute 5 ILCS 120/2 for the purpose of discussing the following. 1, employment matters, 5 ILCS 120/2C1, and closed meeting minutes, 5 ILCS 120/2C21.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mr. Jewett, seconded by Mr. Tavera. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tavera?
Yes.
Mrs. McGinley?
Yes.
Mr. Jewett?
Yes.
Mrs. Larson?
Yes.
Mr. Francisco?
Yes.
Ms. Lee?
Yes.
And that will put us in closed session, which brings us to the end of our regular open session board meeting for tonight. Thank you everyone who attended online and in person. Our next meeting will be on Monday, April the 1st at 7 o'clock. Look forward to seeing you then.
And have a good spring break.
Yep, spring break, positive occurrence. Yay, spring break.